To respond to this, Nationals leader David Littleproud joins us now. David, welcome to the program. Now, to start with, I want to get your response to Chris Bowen there, that we can meet those targets because we've got sunshine and wind.
Yeah, well, it's nothing more than an expensive charade that was portrayed today. When you think about that our energy grid's about 33% of emissions, and we've gone to this all renewables approach that was meant to bring a reduction in your energy bill this year by $275 from what you were paying in 2022, yet they've gone up by $1,300. I really think that Chris Bowen and the Climate Change Authority, led by somebody that is on the board of a renewables energy fund, is selling the Australian people a pup. And when they won't tell us exactly what the costs are, then I fear you're going to pay. And the devil will be in the detail. Let me tell you, when you hear and you see that when energy is 33%, they've got this thing called the safeguards mechanism, which is a tax on our big emitters, our industry. They're going to broaden that. They're going to do a review on that next year. They'll broaden that. But to make sure that Australian industry can at least have some hope and compete, they're going to bring a tariff in on imports of cement, steel, fertiliser that goes to your food. And that means that it'll all get passed on you. So the BCA and Industry Group of Australia are all saying, yes, this is a great thing to do, because you know what happens? Big business is just going to pass that on to you, the Australian consumer. So it all sounds good, but ultimately it comes back to one principle Dad always taught me: someone always pay. And someone is you. You're going to pay for it all at the end, because this is all just getting passed on to you.
David, at Susan Lee's press conference today, she was very clear. She made the point that the coalition does agree that emissions need to be reduced. Do you agree with that statement? Do you agree with the Albanese government that emissions do need to be reduced by 2035?
Well, we need to continue to work towards that, but not at any cost. And what net zero has become is about trying to achieve the impossible rather than doing what's sensible. Net zero is not the only way to address climate change. You can have sensible solutions like nuclear energy. You can make sure that you do it in a sensible way, but you've got to be upfront and honest with the Australian people. Peter Dutton and I were that. We took a fully costed energy grid to the Australian people at the last election. Chris Bowen to this day still will not tell us exactly what this all renewables approach will cost us. In fact, he's already spent and spending over $60 billion in what we call the capacity investment scheme, which underwrites a return for renewable energy companies. Now, if they're so affordable and they're the cheapest form of energy, I don't understand why the Australian taxpayer would have to subsidise these multinationals to come and to build these renewables. So we should be sensible about how we reduce emissions. We're blessed with all the sovereignty of all our resources here, and we should have a technology agnostic approach, because there is a couple of countries that have tried to go all renewables. It's called Portugal and Spain. They got to 77% and they lost their entire grid for a week and a half because they didn't have this thing called baseload power. So ideology is going to catch up with this, but economics already is. You can see it in your energy bill every quarter. You open it up and you should see Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen's face on it.
David, you mentioned there taking a more what you called sensible approach. What do you think a sensible 2035 target would look like?
Well, and that's very difficult when we're not in government. We don't have the machinery of government, and obviously there's no linear approach to that, because our grid would be different in terms of what we're looking at in terms of introducing nuclear. But gas and coal can still exist with carbon capture storage. The Japanese are taking our coal, our gas, using carbon capture storage, capturing the carbon, putting it on a boat, either dropping it off in the Philippines or sending it back here. If they can do that, why can't we? But I think we've also got to think about this whole net zero thing and think about climate change and say, well, it's not just necessarily about mitigation, it's about adaptation. And we're spending all this on us trying to mitigate our emissions to when we're only emit 1% of the total global emissions. Why don't we look at adaptation, particularly if China and India aren't going to reduce their emissions? They're still building coal-fired power stations in China and India. Why wouldn't we look at adaptation and doing sensible things about making sure that we're adapting to the climate?
You mean adapting to a warmer climate? Is that what you mean?
Well, and whether that's more extreme events, particularly if you look at floods, why wouldn't we build some more dams? If you're going to have greater weather events of rain, isn't it just common sense that we capture the water, we store it and use it when we hit and have longer droughts? So this is where some common sense in terms of adaptation is really important for Australia, rather than this mitigation model against our emissions for the world, which we can't change.
Can I just...
and we'd have an asset for this country.
Sorry, we're just nearly out of time. I just want to get back to the targets. So everyone broadly sensible agrees that the targets today are too aggressive. I mean, even Matt Keane said they're among the highest in the world, and those that have higher rely on nuclear energy. But do you think there should be targets at all?
No, I think we should have some aspirations about doing the right thing. But when you look at what the rest of the world's doing, they're starting to step away from this. So not
targets, aspirations, not targets.
Well, I think within that comes numbers, but that depends on how you're going to approach it. It's the philosophy and the ideology of what you're going to approach and how you approach it. Looking at the technologies and not turning your back on technologies like nuclear energy, but also carbon capture storage for our coal-fired power assets, and for our gas. So our method would be a lot different, and yes, there'd be a number to it, but I can't give it to you tonight because we don't have the machinery government to support it. But we wouldn't be going down an all renewables approach, and we wouldn't be putting onerous legislation like the safeguards mechanism on our industry.
All right, David Littleproud, thank you so much for being with us tonight and for being very generous with your time.